A secretary copying a text. Some years ago I used to work at a small private institute for teaching English. I live in a country where English is not our native language. The secretary there was quite sweet with everyone, and she was the one who suffered the most the pressure from our boss. I couldn't tell who of the two had less knowledge about technology. Anyway, I got to work as usual and I see her typing as fast as she could. She was in her late 50s, so she was doing it quite slowly, but trying. I ask her what she is doing because obviously she had a lot of other tasks to do: receive phone calls, talk with parents, fill in forms, etc., and you could tell she was making her biggest effort. She told me our boss had asked her to copy a whole text more than 10 pages from a PDF file to doc for her daughter's schoolwork. I approach her and I tell her, but why don't you do this? And I copy from the PDF and paste it onto the doc file. She looked at me while all the words from the PDF file appeared immediately and magically in the doc file. I think she is still thanking me to this day. In the early days we used an Office-like product on the VAX. We were writing procedures as a group and reviewing them. During the review we decided we needed to change some text in the first or second paragraph. The engineer we were working with pitched a fit. She complained how this would take her hours. Needless to say, much discussion ensued and I finally asked her how she was writing the document. In a spreadsheet, of course. She set the column width of the cells to match the paper width, and when we deleted or added words she would have to edit every line below to make it fit. I went back to her desk and we figured out how to move all of her documents out of the spreadsheet to the word processor. Now her problem was learning the word processor. Whenever I sit down and find a task that feels like it was poorly designed or requires an absurd amount of effort to do something simple, I take a step back and consider that I'm the problem. Clearly, if it's been done by many people before me with ease, I must be approaching the task incorrectly. Some people just don't have that. Now all of that goes out the window when trying to do something as simple as replace a headlamp bulb in a Subaru. That doesn't count because their engineering flies in the face of common sense. The first Mercedes A-Class, where you literally had to remove a wheel to change one of the headlights. What, why, how, what? I mean, I never really designed a product for use by others. But that seems so absurd. Having to go at the headlight from under the hood I can get behind. But having to remove a wheel? Sounds like it's made to take extra effort to squeeze out some more money at the shop. On my wife's 2013 Chevy Traverse you have to cut the wheels away from you and remove the plastic under the fender to reach up and change the headlight bulb. There is no way to access it from the top without removing several other parts. I also used to have a car, can't remember the make or model, that to get to the battery you had to take off a tire. It was a pain. Basically they do this and tell you in the owner's manual to take it to the dealership to have this very basic part of vehicle maintenance done. The dealerships then get to charge you over $100 to change a headlight bulb. My Chevy Lumina required several other parts to be removed before you could replace the battery. I don't remember if the wheel was one of them. You couldn't even get to the battery to jump the car, so they had to install a solenoid that led to the battery terminals. I also remember that when a dime got stuck in my cigarette lighter socket, it shorted out most of the fuses in the car, including all interior lighting. I wasn't particularly sad when the transmission died and the car would only drive in reverse. Well, of course not. Because you can't be sad when you're terrified, going 65 backward down the highway. LOL. I'm just guessing here, but the country was Japan, right? I'm from Japan and I once saw someone put a USB in. Open a Word doc. There was a URL which they typed into Yahoo search, then clicked on the link for a YouTube video. I am still in total shock and amazement at this. A good 5 minutes since I first read it. This is the epitome of technical ignorance. It would pain me to watch someone do this. I need to walk off and have a cup of tea about now. Thanks, should have thought of this one. I hope you enjoyed your tea. Always, thank you. Although I do need a new favorite mug. I'm sorry, why the hell was she having to do something for her boss's child's schoolwork in the first place? Glad you were able to help though. The answer is right there in the question. Boss. In big companies such misuse of resources is forbidden by policies and directives and rules. In small companies, though, where the degree of remove between the owner and the top manager is zero, this kind of thing is somewhat usual. We'll never forget how my ex-boss called us in for our routine update Sunday, so we can move peeping tons of office furniture he was trading with in a side business to a different place. He also was like, it's a peeping fun family gathering coming in on Sunday once every month. Or I had a guy once bring in his laptop because he was locked out and couldn't remember the password. As I'm explaining the fees and so on, he says, "Let's try something," and proceeds to put in the proper password. Proximity effect. Just talking to a tech made him remember the password suddenly. Some IT folk have an INT boosting aura. There's an int boosting aura. And I think some people also have an ongoing repair spell aura, touch effect as well. Anytime an appliance doesn't work for my wife, I can walk in, look at it, tap it slightly and say try it now and it'll work. Fonzie was just a bard who had a bunch of repair spells ready. I had an internship working at a hospital service desk in the early 2000s and one day got a call to replace a toner cartridge in some little tiny out-of-the-way office that was staffed by 3 older women. I found out after the fact that I got sent up there as these ladies were problem users, always having all sorts of problems with their computers, none of which was their fault. So pretty standard intern treatment. Anyway, I get up there, as I'm dealing with borderline sexual harassment and comments about how speepty IT as we call you the no help desk. Haha. As I was replacing their toner, I happened to notice that one of the ladies is adding up a column of numbers in Excel manually with a calculator. So I showed them the sum function and it blew their minds. Apparently a large portion of their jobs entailed adding up these numbers in these sheets twice. Another one of them would also add them up manually to double check, and I just turned their entire working day into about 5 seconds. So I get back downstairs and I mention this to my boss, thinking it just an amusing anecdote, and he gets this giant Grinch smile on his face, says thanks and sends me out on my next task. A few weeks later, I ended up in the same area of the building and poked my head in the office. Completely vacant. Apparently my boss made their boss aware of the cost-saving opportunity I had discovered and they were all let go. Sounds similar to the guy who accidentally automated a lady's job. Ike, but this story is equally funny and pure. I imagine this poor lady thinking her boss told her to type 10 pages. You truly must have been her hero. Sounds like the bid might actually have asked her to do that. I've certainly seen people routinely doing mind-numbing things like that which could be replaced entirely by a few careful keystrokes. Always ensure the administrative assistants are taken care of. That and the bookkeepers. The assistants have the ear of the boss and the bookkeepers have discretionary funds that can be used for small IT projects if they weren't budgeted in the IT budget. You have a budget? This is the same kind of magic. Like pulling the power plug from the router and plug it back in to repair the internet. She may have only trafficked and scanned PDFs up to that point, so copying seemed impossible. Yeah, I had a customer who said keywords weren't working on there was printing, scanning to PDF, and uploading. I introduced her to Cute PDF. Had a lady do this the other day. When I tried to show her the copy/paste function, she interrupted me with, please, stop talking so I can do what I need to. Bitch. No worries. There is an XKCD for that. Was expecting 763. Was not disappointed. I once had a customer on TeamViewer who I asked to go to Google. They Googled Google to figure out how to get to Google. I sort of was worried we were about to open a black hole into the darkest realms of stupidity. Googleception lol. Right? I quietly said to them, you are on Google now. And they just kept hunt/peck typing G. Gee. At that point all you can do is zone out and await the sweet release of death. Hey, if step 1 is go there, then that's what you do. Starting location doesn't affect that. The boss was using the secretary for his daughter's schoolwork. Isn't that a violation of company policy, school policy, and possibly the law? Yes, she wasn't allowed to complain either. On top of that, our former boss bragged about how her institute was the only one which abide by all local rules, including paying taxes, keeping us on payroll, etc. I'm glad I left. Went to get my taxes done at a tax place. The lady who was working on my file suddenly got very flustered because she could not print the documents. She got more and more upset, until I asked her what was happening. Realized she had no idea how to find the print options in menu. I leaned over to discreetly point out where the menu was. At this point she completely lost it, with everyone at the center turning to see her having a meltdown. She eventually stumbled upon the solution. Digital illiteracy is a thing. I work as a temp contractor reviewing federal grant proposals. We are to read through their proposed project materials, including the project narrative, and assign scores for different elements. These narratives were PDFs. I'd read the whole narrative through, and then begin scoring. If I needed to quickly find how they described a certain element, I'd just hit Ctrl F, and then the key word. After we had to have a phone conference with other reviewers to discuss scoring. I can't tell you how many times other reviewers would mark scores low because they couldn't find it in the narrative. So I'd be like, really? It's on page 14. Apparently no one but me knew about Ctrl F. I shed a mental tear. So glad you helped out a nice lady like that. There are times I see evil bitchy tech illiterate Karens having similar situations and I just ignore and let them do their thing. We call it witchcraft. You're welcome. Oh my goodness, what a sweetheart. I'm so glad you showed her. I used to work for one of the baby bells and supported several call centers. This was on the business side and the folks there often had to work with very large data sets. More than once I'd find someone doing a stare and compare and have to show them how to use the tools they had, such as Excel, to make quick work of something that would otherwise have taken them hours. At my job I was innocently minding my own business when I heard someone I knew complaining to their cube neighbor about a project. They had 2,000 database entries and had to compare it against 5,000 database entries from a completely different database to find the overlap. Naturally they were both from external sources and sent in Excel well. CSV. I had her budge over, threw together a quick formula to drag down, apply a filter and boom. Comparison done and list extracted in like 30 seconds from the time I sat down. It's hard to remember sometimes that really basic is outright witchcraft to some people. The number of people I encounter who don't know how to use copy and paste is staggering. I also see a bunch of people who toggle caps lock for every capital letter they type instead of holding shift. Unpeeping real? I blame phones for the caps toggle issue. The touch screen has no shift button analog, and it's what most people use. Most of the time. Wah. I'm not sure what you mean here, but shift works pretty much the same on my phone as it would on any machine. If I hold it and type a character or several, it releases like would be expected. The only two differences to any other machine is that if I tap it once, it locks for the typing of one capital character, and if I double tap it, it locks like caps lock. Android here with board. In all fairness, not all PDFs have searchable text. Okay, I'm not going crazy. Why does this happen? I scan a lot of documents, and they're generally seen as images rather than text. Nowadays, there are scanners and software out there that convert the words to searchable text, some more accurate than others. Lol.